And I think that ultimately, if we were to drive down to one word about how money and faith can coexist in a really healthy way, it's intentionality.
The question is do they collide or do they coexist? I personally think that they coexist. I would imagine you do too, but we'll see. I don't want to lead the witness here.
They can.
They can, absolutely. So let's talk about it from a perspective of faith. You know, what is, and when we say faith, Derek and I are both Christians. So what does the Bible tell us about money? Is it a bad thing or is it a good thing?
I feel like I'm in church camp.
Yeah.
What does the Bible tell?
Yeah.
No, I mean, interesting you bring this up, and I'm going to get to your question. I just had a conversation with somebody about this, and she was coming on as a client, and she had some hesitancy about coming on because she was concerned by borrowing money and then re-leveraging money and, you know, building wealth.
Was she already debt-free?
No. Isn't that interesting? But she felt like, she felt as if...
Is this awkward?
No, you're good.
Have this
I mean, the pillow is kind of weird, but... Golly. Holy cow. But yeah, no, as far as like debt is concerned and wealth and money is concerned, right? Like it is part of society. It's always been part of society. Even go back to when Jesus walked in Jerusalem, you know, there was taxes, there was debt, there was people, there was rich and there was poor, right? So I think a lot of people naturally think like money is a sin, and that is not anywhere in the Bible. And I'm no pastor or anything like that. I just love Jesus, but I have done a good amount of due diligence on this. And what I found is, you know, a lot of people are really talking about Proverbs 22 when it talks about people being, kind of a slave to the lender, right? And that the becoming a slave of debt is, you know, something that is potentially looked upon as sinful or just not good to do as a Christian. Yeah. And I think you gotta really get to the heart of that, right? So if you are leveraging yourself out completely, what does it take away? It takes away the ability to give and to be a blessing to others, right? So I think that a lot of times when we talk about biblical things, it's always a hard issue. Yeah. It's not really a tangible world issue as much as we want to make it one, right? So the reality is money doesn't cause sin in itself, right? Money doesn't cause purity in itself. Yep. What it does is it is going to exemplify. It is going to it's going to be like put a megaphone in front of whatever the aroma of your heart is. Yep. That's it. So if the aroma of your heart is to be greedy, to take people's money, to be a hoarder, to be all these things, then money is going to make that worse, right? Vice versa. If you are somebody who your heart, I always call it the aroma of your heart, but your heart posture, whatever you want to call it, is to be blessed so you can be a blessing. If you want to see the people around you win even more than you're able to win, if that's truly a heart thing, then when you come into money, you're going to be able to do those types of things, and that's going to be personified as well, and it's going to come out in your life, right? And so that to me is going to be the key, is where's the heart at? Why do you want to make money? Right? Like, yeah, we can all have nice things, right? Like I heard it said that, you know, when poor people, we'll talk about socioeconomic scale, when poor people come into money, they buy things. Right. Okay. When middle class comes into money, they buy liabilities, cars, Escalade, and then they want to show off. When rich people get money, they buy more income. Right. So my question is like, let's say, you know, if you're somebody who wants to be rich, whatever that means, right? Then if that's the case, number one, you need to be buying income. But number two, if you're buying that income, why are you buying it? Are you buying it to go buy, you know, more cars? Or are you buying it so that way you can still live an enjoyable life, but also help the other people out that need the help? Yeah. Be a blessing to others because you're blessed. Your cup is overflowing, so therefore give it to somebody. Right. You know, so I think that, and I also think God honors that, right? I think that's just the reality, is the more your heart posture is positioned there, it's good. And so if that's the case, I have a hard time believing, right? Like imagine me and you, we get to the gates of heaven, right? And my heart posture from day one has always been to give just as much, if not more, that I receive, right? Yeah. And so if that's my heart posture, I could have $1 billion, I could have $100 billion, $1 trillion. The number doesn't matter. What matters is how did I use that resource?
Right.
That's ultimately, I think, what God is going to be looking at.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be looking at your tax returns and be like, oh, you 1%er. Sorry, you got to get in the back of the line.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I know that we're talking about faith, and this is kind of going down a different rabbit hole, which I tend to do, is
squirrel.
Socialism. Listen, kind of one thing that made me think of this is you're talking about what poor people do, middle class do, versus what the rich do. If you took all the money in the world and evenly distributed amongst everyone in the world, within a short period of time, it's going to be back in the same hands it was before, right? It's about being a good steward of resources. And I feel like God blesses you if you're a good steward of it, right? So I remember early on, in my career, I was not a good steward of money. I was doing the opposite of what you're talking about. I wasn't so much coveting money, but I was buying things and just wasn't a good steward of it. So what did he do? He took it away from me. All of it, right? And I feel like now that I'm being a decent steward, I feel like I can always grow and get better, but I'm a decent steward of my money. He continues to bless me with more resources. And, I look back at that time, we were going to a very small community church, and the church was struggling, with giving. And this was post 2008 mortgage meltdown, recession. A lot of people were struggling financially, so the church was struggling financially.
Yeah.
And, when it came to mission trips, a lot of that got cut, VBS, stuff like that got cut. And I look now, because that church is somewhat in the same position with a lot of the same members. It's changed a little bit, and we moved on to a different church. But I look back now and say, okay, well, if I became a member of that church again, just because of what I do financially, how much does it bless that church if Michael were to join, or another Michael were to join, or a third Michael were to join? What does that do to the church? Now, mission trips come back, VBS comes back, all this stuff that the church does so well that I think government does way better, they would be able to do because of our tithings, right? Now, look at the church that we're in now. Oh, my goodness. Did you know that there are more people in slavery today than during what we thought was the European American slave trade?
I believe that. Human trafficking is,
huge.
I
was blown away. I had no idea, especially in Asia and in India and places like that. So our church has lots of resources. And it's not a mega church. It's kind of in the middle. I don't like the mega churches because I feel like we get gobbled up in it and we don't really have the sense of community in it. I feel like this one is a good middle ground, but they have plenty of resources. We're in Williamson County, Tennessee, one of the wealthiest counties in the entire country, if not the world. So they've got tons of resources. Well, what are they talking about every single week is these case studies and testimonials where they're freeing people from slavery. They're talking about their past life versus their current life. And not only is that a blessing, but I was just blown away with the atrocity that people are still in slavery.
Right.
Oh, I thought that was 200 years ago, and here we are in 2022 dealing with more people in slavery than it was during the American-European slave trade. But, some people get caught up in this belief that, the meek shall inherit the earth, right? And sometimes I feel like they lean on that as a crutch and really to describe the position that they're in. This is really why. It's more of an excuse, like, well, this is why we are the way we're financially, because we're just better Christians. And the meek shall inherit the earth. What do you got to say to that?
Yeah, the idea of meek has nothing to do with socioeconomic situations, right? It doesn't say the poor are going to inherit.
Right.
It's the meek is again, it's a heart posture.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think about, let's use a perfect example. Okay, Jesus, right? He goes into the temple, right? And they're collecting taxes, right? What does he do?
Flips the table.
Flips the tables. He's pissed off.
Yeah.
Right. That's not like a meek move, right?
Right.
Like in general, that wasn't a meek move, but that was justice because he's both.
Right.
Right. And so what it came down to was it wasn't the fact that they were collecting taxes. That's not why he flipped the table. There's a lot of people that say like Jesus was a socialist. I don't necessarily get down with that, but he came in there because the heart posture of those people.
Yeah.
It was disrespectful, right, of the temple because that wasn't the time or place.
Right.
To me, the perfect situation of meek is somebody who is, let's say, wealthy, whatever that number is. For some people, wealthy might be $100,000 a year, might be a net worth of $200,000. Who knows? Some people, wealthy might not be unless you're a billionaire, right? Like you talk to Elon Musk, what does he think wealthy is?
Yep.
Okay, so it's all relative.
Right.
But let's just say you're a wealthy individual. At the end of the day, you know, like being wealthy in and of itself is not going to create a meekness or a lack of meekness, right? But I think it's the coolest thing when you have somebody who's legitimately loaded
Yeah.
and they have the ability to do whatever they want and act however they want, yet they choose to be meek.
I got a perfect example. Jeremy Newsom. I mean, is that dude not? He's one of the best.
Very well off.
Yeah, no offense to you, but he's one of the best. Yeah, he's well off. He's one of the best dudes I've ever met, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, man, in 2 weeks, you want to come by the office and look over our shoulder and kind of help us with some of this day trading stuff? He's like, dude, I'm wide open. I'd be honored to because you're one of the best people I know. Now, is that a legitimate truth? I highly doubt so. If so, he needs to get out and broaden his horizons for it. But, I mean, that's just the way that he is. And the dude's well over 100+ million net worth, and he's like, drop the ball. I'm like, yeah, man, I'd love to help you out. So I think he's a perfect example of what you're describing.
Yeah, I think that's like incredible, right? Like the ability to be an abundant giver of your time, example, you know, exhibit A, of your money, of any resource that we have. That's, you know, that's what's really going to be important in this. So like to kind of get back to, you know, like what we do, to go back to Proverbs 22, I believe it's verse 7. So it's talking about being a slave to the lender, right? And what's cool about what we do, and this is what I talked to the woman about that I just had this conversation with, is we actually teach you how to be like the head over the lender.
Right.
We actually teach you how to replace the lender, actually.
Yeah.
Like at the end. So here's what we're going to do is we are just using the lender. We are in control.
Right.
The lender's not in control of you.
The lender becomes a slave to us.
Exactly. We're flipping it on its head.
Yep.
Right. So we're actually we're not doing what the Bible is warning against by taking out debt. As long as it's calculated, it's data driven. There's ROIs involved. All these things. So we take that all into account.
Yeah.
And so it's not just willy-nilly we're blowing money or we're just going borrow as much as the bank's willing to give us. That's not what we're doing. It's all going to be with intention. And I think that ultimately if we were to drive down to one word, right, about how money and faith can coexist in a really healthy way, it's intentionality.
Right.
That's what it comes down to is intentionally how are you using those resources?
Yeah, you could replace lender with any other potential sin. You know, you could be a slave to alcohol. You could be a slave to working. You know, things that you covet, you could be a slave to. So just because
if it's an idol.
Yeah, absolutely. So just because the word there in the Bible is lender, I mean, it doesn't mean that money is bad. It's just don't be a slave to anything.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree.
So we've kind of covered it all. We covered socioeconomics, slavery.
Socialism.
Yeah, socialism, capitalism, faith, and now finances. So I appreciate you watching this podcast. We got more coming, so please subscribe to this. It greatly helps our channel. Also hit the bell for the notification bell, and y'all take care. God bless.